If you thought the race for the White House has been gripping so far, there is a date looming fast which could give it another big twist. It's hard to believe, but Kamala Harris and Donald Trump have never met face to face. That all changes on Tuesday when the two go head to head in the only likely presidential debate between these two at this election. Already there have been rows about the rules as the political temperature rises ahead of the event. And after a lot of feverish campaigning in the battlegrounds, it's likely the two candidates may disappear a bit from view as they're drilled by their debate prep teams for a night which just might prove a defining moment. Popcorn time. Welcome to Talking Politics USA. Hello, well, we're fast approaching what could be one of the most consequential weeks of this election so far, and there's already been some pretty hot contenders for that. So much to talk about ahead of that debate, and we'll also do one of our up-close takes on one of the key battlegrounds. To chat about all of this, I'm delighted to welcome back the journalist Jessica Taylor from the Cook Political Report, Heather Nauert, who is an advisor to the Trump administration, and Adam Hodge, who was an advisor in both the Biden and Obama administrations. Great to see all three of you. It's my first one back after the summer, so I've been doing a real catch-up this week and looking ahead to next week as well. But great to be back in all of your company, especially with this debate. I mean, it's just sort of mouth-watering, isn't it? Before we talk about that, Jessica, I thought I might just come to you first. I mean, it's the first time we've spoken to you since the conventions. Give us your take on the state of the race. I mean, it feels neck and neck. The polling implies that. Give us the take at this point.
Yeah, I mean, so we're a couple of weeks into, about 6 weeks into this complete shakeup of things, and we're just a little over a week after the Democratic National Convention. I think, as we're watching the national polls, we are seeing some of it tighten. I mean, I look at the battleground polls in these states. What still remains true is that the electoral map has been remade with Harris atop the ticket, whereas Biden's only path was through Michigan, Pennsylvania, and Wisconsin. And, I was talking with some super PAC advisors to the Biden super PAC, and they thought after that disastrous debate that really Biden's chances were only in the single digits of winning. So she has put Nevada, Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina back on the map. So it just widens the pool. We're sort of essentially back to the 2020 battleground map. But, I think, and I've been talking with Republicans and Democrats this week, and I think that, sort of the traditional post-convention bump, I think really Harris got it beforehand where she was consolidating the base. And so we saw sort of that, maybe it was a honeymoon period, but I think she was just able to consolidate, young people, people of color, and Democrats that might have eventually come around to Biden, but so far we're sitting on the sidelines. And so I think we're really back to sort of a really similar contour to 2020 minus the pandemic, really, of things. We haven't seen Trump necessarily grow his support in some places, but it's remained very steady. But Harris is just that much more competitive than Biden ever was. And, largely the battleground polls that I see, they're within the margin of error. So I think, this debate could be really consequential because, really, I think the margin is so close that a point or two, even half a point or something, could move some of these. So I think it's a jump ball at this point.
It's a thriller. Just a quick hot take from you, Heather, and from you too, Adam, on where we're at now. Everybody's back after the summer and things have settled. It's really interesting, Heather, what Jessica was saying is if you look at those polls with Trump, I mean, it's just level. It's level, isn't it?
It really is. It's well within the margin of error. Americans traditionally after Labor Day sort of wake up, send their kids back to school, start politics, and that's exactly where we are. We see the candidates all over the country, with Harris going to states that are swing states and then non-swing states. I'm here in New Hampshire. She was up here yesterday. New Hampshire has just a few electoral votes. But she's, of course, then heading down to Pennsylvania and was in Michigan earlier this week, and important states as well. So you really see whether it's her or former President Trump hitting the ground running, and the stakes are incredibly high.
They so are.
Which might be the only one. And in my view, the American public deserves much better. We need to hear more not less, from our presidential candidates.
Fascinating. Okay, Adam, before we get stuck into these debates proper, just your sense of where we are. You've had Labor Day, kids are back to school, as Heather was saying. This is really now the sort of final road in, isn't it, these next 2 months to today?
Well, the first thing I'd say is, that Republicans and Democrats can all agree is that it's great when our kids go back to school. So we're very happy about that. I think Jessica is right. The convention bounce that Harris has received did sort of start between the campaign, but I've been talking to the campaign and talking to folks close to her team. They know this is incredibly tight, and a 1 to 2 point advantage for either candidate in some of these states is well within the margin of error in virtually all of them. So I think that's why this debate will be so pivotal. We clearly saw with the first debate just how the potential opportunity, but also damage that could come from a poor debate performance. Certainly some of the debates that Kamala Harris had in the 2019-2020 season, some of them she landed some good points. Some of them were not helpful for her, and those clips and sound bites have stuck with her to this day. So that is the opportunity. People will tune in. Some respects will tune in for the first time, and it's an opportunity, I think, and you've seen some of the campaigns, but both campaigns start to lay out a bit more of their policy specifics on small businesses and taxes to try to get that into the bloodstream, so they have something to talk about.
Sure, and it's going to be fascinating to see how much ground they manage to cover, how much policy versus the personal will come out in these debates. Okay, let's just draw breath then and really drill down on those and talk about that debate itself. It's worth remembering, as Adam was just saying there, that it was that one disaster of a debate between Trump and Biden back in June that brought us to where we are now. So no one can ever say they're not consequential or that they can't change the state of a race. It is a tough shout for Harris, though. It's her first and perhaps only shot. Before we get stuck into our conversation, here's a flavour of the highs, the lows, and some of the real lows of some of the most recent debates.
Excuse me. My turn.
What we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund.
Will you shut up, man? Listen, who is on your list, Joe? Who's on your list?
Gentlemen, I think
this
we've
is
ended
so
this.
He's going to pack the court.
We have ended.
Not going to give a list.
We have ended this segment. We're going to move on to the second segment.
That was really a productive segment, wasn't it? Keep yapping, man.
The people understand, Joe.
I have a feeling that by the end of this evening, I'm going to be blamed for everything that's ever happened.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah, why not? Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit that the
puppet.
Russians have engaged. It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
On the total initiative relative to what we can do with more Border Patrol and more asylum officers.
President Trump?
I really don't know what he said at the end of that sentence. I don't think he knows what he said either.
I mean, I have to say, as somebody who moderates debates back in the UK, these bring me out in an absolute cold sweat, even watching these, especially the Chris Wallace one, which I literally still have to put my hands in front of my face when contemplating. Jessica, if I just come to you first, just for that, an overall thought on the status of the debates in the US, because they have a special place there, don't they?
They do. I mean, these were, maybe it's because I've been a political nerd for a long time, but I mean, I remember even in college and high school, like gathering to watch these. In college, we would gather in our dorm rooms to watch them. But, I do think I'm a special breed of person in that regard. I mean, I do think that for people tuning in, if you aren't watching, if you aren't really connected to the campaign, you do have these times to turn in. They're very high ratings events because they also, we see them, and even though ABC is hosting this one, it is going to be simulcast across the other networks. It is a little bit different that we are having this cycle because typically we have the Commission on Presidential Debates that will set these debates and different things. So it's been different because you now have the the campaigns directly sort of negotiating on these rules, and we've been hung up on, I call it the debate about debates and different things, because there was one set of rules that the Biden and the Trump campaign agreed upon. But, even though the Biden campaign effectively became the Harris campaign, Harris, wanted the mics unmuted. I think it's just because this is going to be a different type of debate than certainly what we saw in July. I mean, as you mentioned, sort of as I'm sitting there listening to those clips, reliving 2016 and 2020, I mean, but the presidential debates were so different once you inject Donald Trump into it, because he is a showman. He is a he's been on TV. He knows how to, say these things that other politicians would not dare, that you would not hear, Barack Obama or Mitt Romney or John McCain do. I mean, there were barbs and stuff flying, but, nothing like, saying that, you're the puppet or you're going to be in jail and different things. And when I was listening back to that, you can sort of see why the Harris campaign wants to throw him off, because I think, in 2016, there were things, I think, because Clinton was a woman, that he said and different things that could have landed. But also, Hillary Clinton was just such a known political figure that she had such built-in negatives. And I think that Harris is, she's done the vice presidential debates. Okay. And as Adam said, she actually landed some really good hits against Biden, actually, in some of those primary debates, even though she didn't last very long. And she's a prosecutor. I think that's what you're going to see. That's what she's going to try to prosecute this case. And she had some really sort of viral moments when she was on the, Senate Judiciary Committee against Brett Kavanaugh, asking about abortion. Can you think of, they played this at the convention. Can you think of any instance where someone made a decision about a man's health care, talking about abortion rights and different things. So I think she has a way of questioning that, she wanted to sort of bait Donald Trump into responding that might be caught on mic. And you look at sort of the way he's responded to her since she got into the campaign, and I think you can understand that. However, talking with people, if you say something loud enough, even if your mic isn't on, it's going to catch it. And there is a difference that will be this time, whereas reporters were not in the room for that Biden-Trump debate. The reporters traveling with the campaign will be in there, so they could also say that. Yeah.
Well, we know that the rules have been slightly contentious because, as you were just saying, Jessica, they were set by the Biden campaign, who initiated these two dates in the first place. So we know that these rules have been sort of argued over, and the Harris campaign wanted them changed. They wanted open mics, but they have stuck to the original rules and said the mics will be closed when the opponent isn't speaking. So we could talk a bit about those and the technicalities, which, as a debate nerd here, I obsess by, because if I'm running one of them, I want to know what the rules are so I can attempt to enforce them. But what I want to know is what is going on now in this debate prep, because both you, Adam, and Heather know the inside track on this. You know what's going on inside these campaigns. They will go quiet now. We may see them disappear from view. And I just want to know what is going on. Heather, to you first.
Sure. So first off, you may not hear a lot from the candidates between now and the debate day, which is on the 10th of September. And that's simply because the candidates don't want to do anything to either make news or take away from the importance of the event that's coming up. So that's the first thing. Second thing, for traditional debate prep, you typically would pepper the candidate with a lot of questions. You would have individuals working with the campaign who would play the role of different members of the media. In this case, two anchors from ABC News, a man and a woman, David Muir. I used to work with David. He's very smart, affable, well-respected, on top of things. And then also Lindsay Davis. I don't know Lindsay, but she's competent as well. And so you would have individuals playing each of the moderators, peppering them with questions, and then having someone play your opponent, playing Kamala Harris. And that is being done by Tulsi Gabbard. Tulsi Gabbard, for those who are not familiar with her, recently endorsed President Trump. She's a Democrat member of Congress from the House, representing the state of Hawaii. She then became an independent and came out and endorsed President Trump recently. And she's great. She's a great debater. She debated Kamala Harris in 2019. Many argue that she beat Kamala Harris back then. And so she's playing the role of Harris. And so it's interesting and smart to have a woman playing the role of President Trump's opponent. So important debate coming up just a few days away.
That's fascinating. Adam, what do you know of what's going on behind closed doors? We know that Kamala Harris has gone to Pittsburgh to put her head down and get in with the debate team. What's going on?
One, I thought it was a little bit smart to do your debate prep in a battleground state, so you can dip out for a coffee or ice cream and touch a little bit of voters and create some moments when you're actually taking a break. But I have a lot of sympathy for Philip Reines, a former Hillary Clinton advisor, who has the task of trying to beat Donald Trump in the debate prep. I know he did it before, but Donald Trump is such an unpredictable candidate that, as Jessica was alluding to, that it's almost hard to prepare for that type of environment, that type of back and forth, because he knows his way around a stage, and debates in many ways are theater. They are an attempt to convey your message and to own the space, and has a very good job of doing that when he's on TV. I think that the team is getting her prepared for what are the key soundbite moments, what are the key things that you want people to remember and take away that are going to play on Instagram and on social media and TikTok after the debate is over. And that is, again, something that Harris has done effectively in the past. Yeah, she has to find out what those moments are, but they have to also come off as not terribly scripted or rehearsed. I remember back, Marco Rubio got a lot of stick for some of his past debate performances that seemed his canned lines that were repeated over and over again. You can get called out for that. So they're trying to go through the policy. They're trying to figure out their answers, but they're trying to figure out how do you stay disciplined and keep the sound bites clear so that the American people understand what you're offering.
Yeah, discipline is a big question in debates, isn't it? It's just knowing when to sort of take the wheels off and go for it, and then knowing when actually just to stay on message, stay online. It's a really difficult second by second sort of balancing act, isn't it? So what I'd really like to
Trump, it's even harder because some of those moments you can't script them, and so you have to weigh that. And in some respects, it's an advantage that Harris has to try to deal with.
Yeah, I was going to say, what I'd quite like to do actually just counterintuitively for both of you is if you were advising, Heather, if you were advising Kamala Harris at this point to navigate this debate with Donald Trump, Donald Trump, what would you be advising Kamala Harris at this point?
That's a great question. I would advise her to stay sharp on the policies. She has to convince Americans that she is not a radical, which many Americans believe her to be, given the record that she's had in the Senate as the most liberal senator out there, the most liberal. So she has case that she is mainstream. I believe she's not mainstream, but again, she has to try to make that case. So that is one of the most important things that she has to do. And then I want to underscore the fact that many Americans, although we talk about her as nerds, we talk about her, know a lot about her, many Americans do not at this point. So she has to think of every engagement as an opportunity to introduce or reintroduce herself to the American public. In terms of what she needs to do next week, she needs to stay sharp. She needs to stay on point. She needs to be assertive, but not too overly assertive, where it will turn off some voters. Some voters don't like it when a woman is too. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I do. I so do.
Professional and on point.
Okay, so that's some free advice for the other side. I'm going to ask Adam to do the same thing. What would you be advising Donald Trump at this stage? If you were in his camp,
the key thing,
what was the strategy you would ask him to pursue?
The first thing I would say is try to resist your impulses to attack her personally, because on a debate stage, it's not going to come off all that well. I think I would try to encourage that and to stick to the policy. he has, things he can say about the economy, prosecute the case in the economy, talk about how you feel inflation, is out of control and the cost for hardworking families. Talk about immigration. He has something he's very prone to do and does carry the bully pulpit on that tone. Find a way to do that, though, in a way that doesn't turn off independent and swing voters. And that is the delicate dance that he has to try to strike. But I think if he veers into the personal attacks, that is a recipe for disaster in the debate. And that kind of would play into Kamala's, the vice president's hands. So that's the unsolicited advice. But good luck to anybody who gets Donald Trump to listen to their professional advice.
Yeah, it's fascinating. And we know, too, that there's no audience in the room. The journalists can be in there. There's going to be a group of journalists that can maybe listen in to those off-mic moments. But it is going to be a pretty controlled environment. Just really briefly, Jessica, because we want to get on to talking about Michigan, just to give those listening in to us a bit of a steer on one of those key battleground places. But, this is a really tightly controlled debate now, isn't it? Because of those rules that the Biden campaign requested. Do we lose a bit in that, do you think? I mean, I remember, Donald Trump at one point in one of the previous ones with Hillary Clinton could sort of roam around the stage and walk behind her. I mean, it was the most extraordinary spectacle. I mean, they have to stay where they are, no notes, set to time, no opening statements. Could it take a bit of the sting out of a debate, do you think?
I do think this is interesting. I can think back to that in one where they were walking around. That was a town hall style debate, so I think it was a little different. But I mean, Donald Trump feeds off an audience, so I think that he could have been more disadvantaged at that June debate if it weren't that Biden completely imploded. So I think that we were all talking about what a disastrous job Biden did. And I think we weren't focusing on that wasn't a debate that necessarily played to Trump's strengths either. So this could be a more even playing field this time around. So I am interested to see how Trump responds to that. But Harris is someone that she could have tried to play to the crowd certainly as well. So this you're right. This is a more structured type of debate, and whether they stick to that, because again, there's not going to be them walking around trying to get the crowd in or different things. It will be more structured. So yeah.
And these are big. They're both of them. I mean, they have a sort of certain physical presence about them both, don't they? I mean, I just think the body language counts as much as what's coming out of their mouths. I think it's fascinating. I mean, you literally can't take your eyes off it for a second, can you? I cannot wait to see how it unfolds. But we will have to
they've never,
they've never met before.
They've never met each other.
They've never met before.
Really
so what's that? I mean, even just that moment. I mean, goodness, there's so much to look forward to, isn't there? Okay, we better draw breath just for a moment and just to drill down. I know you're dying to say something, Heather. Go on quickly.
Oh, I just wanted to add one point before we move on, and that is the fact that not only do Trump and Harris not know one another, but that the stakes are so high for each. But the stakes are high in different ways for each candidate. For Kamala Harris, she has to prove that she knows what she's talking about. She has to be likable and mainstream. Try to be mainstream. For President Trump, he has to try to get that independent voter, that undecided voter. He already has his base really enthusiastic and energetic and ready to turn out the vote. He has to keep them there, but also get those independents. But one thing that's unique about a man debating a woman is that he can't be seen as too assertive and too aggressive. And so he really has to manage how he's handling himself. The temptation is to talk over everyone, to talk over his opponent, which is why it's great for him that the mics will be muted in between questions so he can't speak over her. So that's going to work in his advantage, and that's why Harris didn't want the mics muted. So I think you just have to be super careful in this interplay between a man and a woman and how that comes across. And Trump can't stand to alienate. He can't alienate any female voters. He needs those women voters,
for sure,
especially and others.
Okay, great. I mean, I know we could literally just talk for about 4 podcasts on this, couldn't we? Fascinating. Well, we're just going to do one of our regular features, looking at one of the most interesting states at play in this election, with a big one this time around, Michigan. We've already alluded to it, where Harris herself campaigned on Monday. Trump stopped by there last week. Where Michigan goes, the country tends to go. Obama in 2012, Trump 2016, Biden 2020. And it is extremely close again this year. In fact, pollsters can hardly even agree on who's who's leading right now. It's part of a so-called blue wall of states, alongside the equally fiercely contested Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Hold on to these 3 states for your dear life, one theory goes. And if Harris manages to do that, she will win the election. But history tells us Trump knows how to win Michigan. And given it has the highest number of Arab Americans of any US state, more than 200,000, the Biden administration's policy on Gaza could well prove consequential. I mean, we've got to keep this section reasonably tight because we've talked so much about the debates. But I mean, Michigan is a really big one. And I'll come to you first, Jessica, on this. But it is that the Arab American vote is really crucial, key area to look at here, especially given those votes in the primaries of the Democrats.
Yeah, you did have a significant number of uncommitted voters that did not vote for Biden. I think that, I was really struck at the DNC. I listened to the other senator from Michigan, Gary Peters, and he was really urging Harris to come out more and break with the Biden administration on Gaza and indicate her differences. And you saw her a little bit do that in her speech, but still really emphasizing that she supports still arming Israel. And, I think there was some more of a sympathetic position toward Palestinians in Gaza. But is that going to be enough for some of those voters? I'm not entirely sure, because she again has continued to reiterate that position. Does she break with this more during the debate? That could be a really key thing to watch. But as you mentioned, in 2016 the race was decided by only 0.2%. It was a slightly bigger percentage, about 2.8 points in 2020. And Gretchen Whitmer, the governor there, she won her race for governor by 10 points. So this was a state that even early on we were kind of thinking, like, is this moving more into the blue column? Because even George Bush lost it twice. George H.W. Bush was the last Republican before Trump to win it in 1988 and stuff. So this was, this is sort of a newer swing state really over the past few cycles. But it is one that they have to be careful. But I think what Harris is able to do that Biden wasn't, those black voters in and around Detroit, there was a real concern I was hearing from Democrats that those voters were going to stay home, that they weren't energized. I think she has done that. But I do think she has to be mindful of that. But I mean, we also have a lot of white working class voters, white non-college voters. That's where Trump runs strong. That was the key to him winning, I think, in 2016. Biden also appealed more to those. How does Harris continue to appeal to those white non-college, I think, especially college and non-college in particular as well?
Yeah. Okay, Adam, maybe on that point.
Jessica makes a smart point about how black voters have been more energized to support Kamala Harris. And that is an incredible part of the coalition that successful Democrats who've won statewide have found a way to build that coalition in the state. I think the key, though, is to do the outreach outside of Detroit to Lansing and up in the UP, the Upper Peninsula part of Michigan. You have to speak to the whole state, and in some respect, this is similar to the strategy that you see the campaign employing in Georgia. It's not enough to just focus on driving your support in the big urban centers. You have to try to hold down the margins in some of these other kind of more rural or ex-urban, suburban parts of Michigan. The key issue where I think this race could be decided is among those suburban women who are trying to wrap their heads around what Donald Trump's position is on abortion. He's wrapped himself in knots over the last few weeks, trying to explain where he is on that issue. Yeah. The Harris campaign has been laser focused on exploiting the opportunity with suburban women voters on that key issue.
Heather, do you want to pick up there?
Yeah, and to that very point, I'm obviously a Republican. I get calls from Republican women asking me exactly where the Republican Party stands on the issue of abortion. Do Republicans support IVF, for example? The answer is yes. But still, there's a lot of confusion there. And that's something that will really be beneficial for Democrats in any state where things are close. Michigan, Trump won it in 2016. Biden won it very narrowly in 2020. Right now, it's up for grabs, 15 electoral votes. It's got to be not only getting out the vote, but informing those voters. And I think both candidates are doing a lot of work in that state. It's one where the Arab American vote could have an impact impact in a very tight election. As compared to a percentage of the overall number of voters in the state of Michigan, the Arab vote is relatively small, but again, in a tight election, that can make a big difference. And many assume that that vote would go to Kamala Harris because she's far more supportive of the Palestinians in Gaza. Some would say she's the most anti-Israel potential president that we would have.
Okay, well, I'm sad to say, because again, there's so much we could just unpack with but all of your comments just there, but we've got to leave it there. Thank you so much, all of you, Adam, Heather and Jessica again. I mean, what a week it's going to be. I just would love to be listening in again to you as soon as possible after that debate on Tuesday night. Enjoy watching it. We'll all be on the edges of our seats here too. Thanks so much, all of you, for joining us. Well, we'll be posting new episodes every Thursday for you to listen to on your favourite podcast platform or watch on ITVX. But for now, from all of us here on Talking Politics USA, bye-bye.